Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Cellar podcast. Today is May 22nd, 2001, and you're back with Brad and Ray. This week, we're going to be talking about the first 3 games of the Hurricanes-Predators series. We're going to take a look around the league and then talk about our predictions for Game 4. So how you doing, Ray?
We're up in the series. Things are good. And you know what? It's playoff hockey all around the NHL. So I'm doing great. As a hockey fan, you love what you see out there. It's the best tournament in pro sports. There's no question. As far as deciding a champion, NHL hockey is where it's at.
We're still up 2-1 in the series, like you said. We knew this wasn't going to be a sweep. At least I don't think most people predicted a sweep. But let's get cracking. So Game 1, maybe the best game the Hurricanes have had thus far in the series, arguably. But what do you think?
Without question, it was the best one that they've played so far. This one was, a back and forth affair. Kind of a surprise. Rod Brind'Amour picks Ned. Ned's in net. And I was a little shocked at this one. I thought, Peter Mrazek, the experience, even though Ned was the guy that was carrying the load here going into the end of the season. I thought Mrazek, his playoff experience might give him the nod, but he goes with Ned, and Alex was magnificent. He made a lot of great saves, but he was a little nervous at the start too. The one thing that I noticed was the puck control, rebound control was a little bit off. He was, giving up a little bit juicier rebounds and so forth, which, you know what, Nashville took advantage of with a lot of great opportunities, followed up by even better opportunities and scrambles in front of the net. That's one thing that I've noticed. But by and large, this went back and forth. I saw Nashville played a very difficult game, very heavy game. And Howla was at it with jabs and sticking people and trying to be annoying. And it's that being that annoyance, coming with ill will. I think that's what they said. The coach for the Preds said before the game, we're going to show up early and with ill will. This one was back and forth, but in the end, the guys that made the difference were people that you and I both spoke about excessively at the first pod, and that was
You
Jordan
hit the nail on the head.
Jordan
Stahl,
Stahl.
Niederreiter.
Yeah.
Those guys were right in the middle of Game 1. Briefly, I'm a numbers guy. I think Ray gets hockey so well in terms of you could be a color guy because you get the flow of the game. I do a pretty good job, but I like stats. Some numbers for you, Ray. Hurricanes and Predators both go 0 for on the power play. 0 for 3 for the Hurricanes, 0 for 4 for the Preds. 38 shots on goal for the Hurricanes, only 24 for the Predators. You mentioned Ned did look a little shaky, so I'm glad they were able to keep those shot totals low. Hurricanes won the faceoff percentage, 51-49. 20 penalty minutes for the Canes and 22 for the Preds, which is just insane.
A lot of those calls came very early in the first and second. Officials kind of setting the tone, next to no penalties, if I recall, in the third period. And that's really how we see, as we've watched a lot of hockey in our days, that's usually how things go. Refs may be attempting to set the tone of the game and how they're going to call things, and then letting the players play it out to the end of 60 minutes. And that's how this one went. And the third period was by far the best ones. In the third period, in the first game, the best period that the Canes have played, in my opinion, and they showed up big. And that's what we needed. We needed the goals. They took control of the game, brought it home. So let's not forget 12,000 fans in the stands, raising
Huge
the roof
difference.
as
Huge
per
difference.
Yeah, that was really, really big and very noticeable in comparison to playoff games in the North, which we'll get to later on in the program.
You know what surprised me about Game 1? Hurricanes had 56 hits to the Predators' 49. I think most people thought the Preds are going to come out and make this a chippy kind of game, and the Hurricanes out-hit them, I think did really well. And the big takeaway for me was predominantly the Hurricanes' hits came from the defense. Shea, Pesce, Hakanpää each led the defense with 5 hits. On the Predators' side, it was the forward with 7, 6, 6, and 5 hits respectively, which in my mind says that the D was having trouble keeping up with Carolina's fast forwards.
They were, and it also says something to the way the Predators were playing, which was heavy on the forecheck. They were getting after it and laying the body on to get action into that offensive zone and get, needle players. That's what they were all about through that whole game. And so, you were right. Your numbers are a little bit earlier on the faceoffs. That was big. Winning the faceoff, so important for Carolina. They need control of the puck at the start so that they can dictate how the play goes rather than being on the back of their feet, if you will.
I think that was a big part of that game. On to Game 2, Ray. I'll start to give you a couple of things. Nedeljkovic, shutout. Huge. This was big for him, I think, in terms of help settle down. He looked a little better, a little less shaky on the rebounds. The Predators come back. They win the faceoff percentage. I remember seeing the Hurricanes being thrown out of the faceoff circle quite a few times a game, enough that it made me notice it. But the Predators went 52 against 48% on the faceoff percentage. They also shot the Canes with 32 versus 31 shots. But the story of the game, Predators power play 0 for 7. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? We've talked about this in the past too, where playoff victories come from your goaltending, your special teams, and secondary scoring. Now, I'll tell you what, the goaltending was huge. Nedeljkovic, as a rookie, waved at the start of this season, coming in, getting a shutout in his second game. That's making a bold statement and more proof that why Rod went with him to start this second game. I immediately thought back to 2006, where a young rookie jumped into the net and went all the way to a Stanley Cup. Now, it's a little early to compare him to the Conn Smythe Trophy winning Cam Ward, who we love dearly.
We do.
But let me say that he's on the right path. He's on the right path. He was much different player in game 2 than to game 1. You could see how relaxed he was. You could see that there was the rebound control. He was swallowing up shots, and he was still active outside the net as well. He was still firing that puck around the glass. He was still trying to advance the puck and get that transition game going very, very quickly. Something that his teammates love about him. They know what to expect from him. He's very quick on his feet, and he can begin that transition very quickly to, maybe catch the Preds on line changes and so forth. No mistake. The Preds got outstanding goaltending as well. Just down 1-0 with the empty netter first, and then the Fogle goal. Which it seemed backwards, but there it was. I mean, Soros kept the Preds in that game because Canes were terrific in this one.
I agree. My big shout out for that game might be the defense. Taking a look at the Predators, Yossi had 8 shots on goal, which the next closest Predator was Forsberg with only 5. They really did a good job of keeping those shots to the outside, and they just really did a great job limiting chances that way. That's one reason the Predators went 0 for 7 on the power play.
Very quickly to state, you talk about defense. This game, we did not see Jacob Slavin, who was sat in game 2 as opposed. He played game 1, which was great. I'm glad to have him aboard, and they rested him game 2 with the lower body injury. We still don't know what it is. And because of all of the penalties, the very heavily slanted penalties for the Predators, that meant that Shea and Pesci were carrying a very heavy load in the penalty kill as well. More minutes. Like, they played a lot of minutes that game.
I got it right here for you, Ray. Pesci, 28 minutes and 2 seconds.
Wow. And the thing is that Rod feels comfortable with, defensive crew. He can keep rolling them out there. It doesn't have to be very lopsided to the top 2 pairing. You know what I mean? Got to tell you, I look at that and think, those adding up minutes and stuff like that might come to bite you in the butt a little bit later on in the series, especially if it lengthens out. Now, they win the game, so they go up 2-0 at home. That's what you expect. I want to shout out to Bean and Gardner, who've been doing both did a great job. Now, Gardner, he was pulled out of game 3, and I don't want to jump ahead to game 3, but he was pulled out for Max Lajoie, who did very well in his very first game in the league this season. For game 3 in a hostile environment, he did great. But again, the minutes were so much.
It was a lot.
I'm thinking ahead, and why don't we just jump right into game 3?
Absolutely.
We'll lead right into it, because this was another situation where penalties were the main story in all of this. And it was really unfortunate because, Nashville came out firing. Ryan Ellis, the players that the Preds had been looking for all season long, showed up in game 3. And I think perhaps that maybe being in front of a home rink with the fans cheering you on gives you that adrenaline rush, that push that you need. And the Preds came out strong. Now, despite all of the penalties, the Hurricanes were right back at them. This was a roller coaster affair. They took turns sharing the lead, But again, the penalties were just so much, very heavily lopsided. And because this game goes into double overtime, that means that, again, Pesci and Shea are taking so many minutes. Lajoie's first opportunity on the ice, played well, admirably. He almost picked up a point on one of his very first shifts. So he did a great job. And Rod Brindamore said as much in the post-game interview, along with other things, which we'll address later on in the show. But look, this one, we said that it was going to be the Canes in 6. And that meant that the Canes had to lose one. If our prediction was going to be accurate, it meant that we expected the Predators to come out with a victory. They're a good squad. They played hard, and all their players showed up the way they needed to. So it's one of those ones where you'd like for them to put it behind them, but I would love to see the Canes come up big in game 4, and we'll preview that coming up as well. But this one was a game that you just got to tip your cap to the Predators, take your shots at the referees, and hope that they'll switch things up a little bit and make things a little bit more even and let the players solve it as opposed to injecting their
I totally
presence.
agree. Before we look at the numbers, do you start Gardner in game 4?
You know,
he takes a lot of heat from the fan base. He was pretty good, I thought, in the first couple of games. There's an excellent chance you might be going to overtime or 2. With the extra experience of Garner, has he warranted that spot, or, you know?
You know what? And this is, again, not taking anything away from Max Lajoie, who played terrific in his very first game again. Cannot imagine the pressure that he must have felt, the excitement, pressure, everything on him. And yeah, he didn't have as much ice time as, you expect. He was on the third combination, but he played really well. And you don't want to take that away from him based on his play. However, Gardner does have a little bit more experience, and that other game was a double overtime, game 3, double overtime. I go ahead and throw Gardner back in the lineup again. Rod knows how to use him. He knows which pairing to put him on. And I think he's okay. And he does provide some opportunities. Like, he pinches at predominantly the right time. Sometimes he makes bad choices for the times that he pinches, but when he does pinch, he can provide some excellent opportunities. And that's what we're going to need.
I agree. And not only that, but I think we spoke a little bit last week about how tough it is to be a defenseman in Rod's system. There's so much to know. Mentally, you have to be in the game. And I think a guy like Gardner has that experience. And I think that just gives him a little bit of an edge in terms of coming out in game 4. 2-1, Canes are still in control of series. It's not a series until somebody wins on an away game.
Yeah.
Do you put Slavin in, or do you hold Slavin out as long as possible and wait until, if the Preds win game 4, do you then put Slavin in game 5?
It is so hard to tell based on knowing so little about the nature of his injury. Because it's just lower body, what exactly does that mean? And he started in game 1, and it was enough to require him to be pulled for games 2 and 3. Is he being rushed back? Like, does his desire to want to play, Jacob's game, he's ready to go. You'd need to take his leg off, and he would still want to get out there on the ice. That's who he is. He's great player, great team leader. I would love to see him on the ice. If he's capable, he needs to be on the ice, especially after such a long game where Pesci and Shea might need time to refuel.
I'm going to be honest, I'm a hard no, mostly because, and this is purely speculation, I wonder if Slavin's dealing with a groin issue, because it sounds like they think that Slavin's day-to-day for the foreseeable future, which to me says this is probably muscular in nature, something easily re-injured, which in my mind says groin. Like you said, with the NHL rules, it could be an amputation, and they would just say it's a lower body injury. So we really don't know. But I'm a no on Slavin for 4. If the Preds tie it, I would really rather have him rest for 4, be back in game 5 on home ice in front of the fans, because I think that really would be that extra push that the Hurricanes would need to win game 5.
It's hard to argue that.
So
hard to argue that. I totally agree with your reasoning. I mean, as much as you want to see him on the ice and help and lead and stuff like that, his health for the long term is more important. And the Canes go out and play a good, strong game and take a 3-1 series lead. Maybe you can take the rest of the series off as far as that goes and get really ready to go to hit the ice for round 2.
That would be excellent. So you mentioned a few minutes ago, Rod had some words about the refs. So if anybody doesn't know, The reason why. The Hurricanes, they go 1 for 3 on the power play. For the second game in a row, the Predators get 7 power plays, including 1 in overtime and a 5-on-3, which is the only one they scored on. So on a standard power play, the Preds are still over. They're over 17, I think, on the series, except for that 5-on-3.
If you don't score, and sorry to interrupt.
No.
If you don't score on a 5-on-3, you have utterly failed. There is no reason for any power play in the NHL to not score when they have a 5-on-3 opportunity. You just there's so much space on the ice, so much puck movement. If you're doing your job properly, you better darn well score. And the fact that, if they didn't, that would have been monstrous. Like they probably never would have. And you're right, I'm with you. As far as I'm concerned, the Preds still over as far as their power play goes.
The face-off percentage, 50-50. Soros actually had a higher save percentage than Ned did at 929 versus 907. The thing we're going to talk about next, during the regular season, Ray, I don't think I shared with you yet. During the regular season, Hurricanes were 20th out of 31 teams in minor penalties. The Preds were 8th. So during the regular season, the Preds were taking far more penalties per game. In 56 games, the Predators took 50 more penalties than the Hurricanes did.
Wow.
In the postseason, it's not even close. The Hurricanes are the most penalized team with 52 minors, penalty minutes, through 3 games. And the Predators are 5th with 38. There's a lot of talk in the NHL. Tim Peel, for those of you who don't know, was a referee, a longtime referee who caught a lot of heat. He was caught on a hot mic saying he wanted to give Nashville a penalty to basically even the game up. We all know what happens, folks. Longtime fans know it's accepted. We get it. That being said, several people have commented, but Brad, the Hurricanes are flat out a better team, and I really honestly believe they are, than Nashville, and they're trying to keep things even. And I would buy that if the penalty calls were 4-3, 5-3, 4-2, but we're talking about 7-3, including, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, in almost every overtime, but particularly double overtime game I've ever seen, if one team gets an overtime penalty, you can absolutely count on the other team is going to get an even up call. It always happens, except for last night.
Except for last night. Now, I'm going to say this. Those who have said that the refs are trying to make the series more even, it's not their job to determine who wins the series or how the series goes. It's up to the players. And if the Hurricanes, who are a much deeper, much better team through and through, go out there and crush the Predators, that's just hockey. The way hockey is. That's just the way hockey is. Not the refs' job to get involved in the game. They are to monitor the game, make sure there's no shenanigans going on. Getting a penalty is in a sense cheating. You're not supposed to cheat to, trip someone, right? To get an advantage. You're not supposed to cheat by cross-checking someone in the forehead, right? Like those are the things that, it's a form of cheating. They call it a penalty, and you spend your time in, the sin bin and you feel shame. As I hearken back to Slapshot, an amazing movie. But nonetheless, the overtime penalty that was called against the Hurricanes was very ticky-tack. Rod said as much in his press conference. Check it out when you get a chance. He's straight up, blunt, very quick, not angry, but he pointed out the facts. But I look at Jordan Stahl, who is partial breakaway, but he had a jump on 2 defenders who hooked him and prevented him from getting his shot illegally. No call. And if you don't call that, you have no business calling any penalty unless it's ridiculously egregious, like throwing your stick or whatever, right? It was a clear hooking penalty that went uncalled. And to me, at that point, it was, if you're not calling that, then they've put away their whistles. But then second overtime, they pick up the call with a ticky-tack call, and it was terrible. And shortly afterwards, even though they killed off that penalty, shortly afterwards, the momentum was there, and boom, goal for the Predators. Rod was very happy with the team. Part of his conversation was the officiating was terrible. You are sure that he is going to be fined for it. I've got fellow Caniacs out there who have said that they'd be willing to contribute to the GoFundMe campaign to pay the bill for this one because they agree wholeheartedly. But nonetheless, he made his statement, and I think he did the right thing, as a matter of fact, because the coach needs to go out sometimes and take the flack for the team and he's going to have them ready to go. They've already put game 3 behind them, and they're ready for game 4, and they will deal with the situation as it occurs.
I agree. For those of you on Twitter, Sarah Sivian, who's a reporter for The Athletic, she covers the Hurricanes. I can't remember if it was her tweet or she retweeted, to paraphrase, they said, I've never seen referees calling penalties to get control of the game that made it worse, more so than it did tonight. And I really think that kind of is the heart. It was, we're going to call these ticky-tack things. There were clearly, like you mentioned, the Jordan Stahl one, delay of game, the puck going over the boards call. There were a couple of things that were kind of egregious in my mind that weren't called. And then on the other end, it's a ticky-tack. And as fans of this game, or no matter what sport you're watching, consistency. For years, it's been the ticky-tack stuff doesn't get called in the playoffs. We're going to call fouls where somebody really gets knocked down, somebody gets injured. It's going to be a hard foul, as they might say in other sports. And that's not how this is being called at all. The last thing I'm going to say about it, because I'm getting myself worked up again.
Sure.
The Hurricanes score either to get ahead or to tie it up, and boom, there's a penalty. Not happy. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? We'll have as fans, you and I will probably have more difficulty putting this behind us than the players will.
Absolutely.
By now,
I'm sure they're on to game 4.
The only thing that I have a tiny concern about is power play has not really showed up. It has not been the top 2-3 in the league that we have come to expect. And sometimes you see that dip in performance in the playoffs because every team is more amped up and so forth. Our penalty kill has been outstanding. No complaints there. The power play needs to move the puck a little bit more crisper, get a few more shots, a little bit more traffic in front. They'll be fine. They'll figure it out. You don't need me to coach.
So if we get the opportunities, I think the boys will, put the biscuit in the basket and take care of that.
100%.
We mentioned Slavin for game 4. We mentioned Garner. Has Ned earned his start in game 4, do you think?
Oh, without question. There were a couple of point blank shots in overtime that that game should not have gone on nearly as long as it did. Point blank shots in front of the net that Ned just makes these great saves on. He squares up to the shooter beautifully. He challenges them a little bit to the top of his crease. So he backs in when he needed to. He's fine. He's good to go. I frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I think he's good to go for the rest of the series, unless he really lays an egg. But until then, you can't fault. Yeah, he allowed 5 goals, but really, I don't think any of them are really on him.
The overtime winner maybe is the one you could say it. We spoke a little bit before the show. Ned likes to play the puck. It scares Carolina Hurricanes fans, I think, a little bit because Archie used to try and do it. And he wasn't good at it. We've had a few other tenders who would try and do it who weren't very good. I think Ned does a really good job overall making those decisions. But last night, he seemed to commit a little early. My biggest question isn't about nerves or anything. I think those are all under control now. Will Ned learn from that mistake? I think he's a smart enough guy. I think he's going to go, I know what I did wrong. And the next time that happens, he's going to be more patient. And some of that's just being a young guy. But that would be the one area where making sure that he's watching some game film, making sure that he is taking in some notes and saying, what do I need to improve upon? Because as good as he's played, we can, all the players can improve. And that would be maybe the one thing where, as good as he is at puck handling, he almost got caught out of the net, I think, on one of those shifts. And
that one shift where
bodies behind him, I'm like, oh boy, that's not a good sign. But
yeah, that one shift where he came charging out, it was near the end of the third period, wasn't it? Near the end of the third or the end of the first overtime, where he goes sliding out, trying to, I don't know where you think you're going. You're challenging the puck. He slid out there. He was 30 feet out of the net and on his side, and he had to scramble to get back in time. Now, thankfully, the D was there to keep the puck to the outside and so forth along the boards. But my goodness, his eagerness to play the puck sometimes gets to him, and that's where the game winner came from. He reached out for a poke check, and in reaching forward, he leaned forward, which gave the game just a little flick of the wrist to lift the puck over his shoulder. Whereas if he stays back and stays tall, he's a big man. He's going to block the net. That puck probably doesn't go in. But again, that feels like nitpicking a little bit. He's played well. I think he's our guy and he's good to go. And you're right. As you stated a little bit earlier, he's learning as he's growing. This is his third playoff game. We have to remember that. This is his third playoff game. He is a rookie.
He did take the
He's a
Checkers to
rookie.
the Calder Cup.
He did.
Before the COVID season, which at the AHL level is a high level of hockey, but it's not the NHL,
Nope.
and we all know that.
It's not.
But yeah, I think Ned has played great. You mentioned the incident where he cayme out, and my first thought was David Ayer's game, and I said, please just don't run him over.
Yeah.
If he gets hurt, Peter and Reimer are very good goaltenders, but right now Ned is the hot hand. He's playing better than both of them. He's earned the job, and I just had a flashback, and I'm like, just get back in the net, be safe.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's the guy. He's good to go in Game 4.
Speaking of Game 4, what do you expect to see out of the Canes? What would you change? What would you do? What would you do different? Give me a prediction. You know, I'm hoping. Game 2, I think it was. Tara Vinen had no shots on goal. Had a couple, I believe, last night. I think one of those other guys needs to break out. Trocheck got his goal last night. I think Svechnikov, Tara Vinen, circle back around to somebody like McGinn, Natchez. One of those guys is going to have to step up and bring that home.
Secondary scoring. You say it over and over. I will continue to repeat it because that's where it's at. And Natchez has been virtually invisible in my eyes. He really needs to step up. Teravainen, he scored a great goal early on with in the I think Game 1 he got his first goal. Nice deflection in front of the net, but he's a great shooter. He is so talented. Put the puck on the net. Where's Dougie Hamilton?
Good question.
Yeah, he's great on he's good on D, but we need a lot of offense from him. And Dougie Hamilton, again, aside from one assist on an Aho goal, where is he?
He's got to step up. He's up, he's going to be, he's a pending UFA, and he's going to be looking for a big contract. And I think overall the Hurricanes and the fans would love to have Dougie back, but they're going to need to see those things from him.
I believe he's worth the new contract. I sure hope he stays, just like you said. Give me a little reaffirmation in my belief in you, Dougie.
For Dougie, my last thought on him is going to be points in the regular season are great, but that contract is going to be earned in the second season.
The Canes are the better squad. Go out there, take control, score that first one, then go out and score the second one, and really put your foot on their neck and stay on it. Do not let them back into the game.
The Canes are in good shape, but if we get out of the first round, we get into the second round, most likely it looks like Tampa Bay, who's going to be a very, very tough team to beat. In today's game, both Kucherov and Sergachev both go out with potential knee injuries. We don't know if they're going to be returning. Kucherov had 9 points in these first 4 games in the series, and that is scary.
Look, you look at that Tampa lineup up and down. Kucherov, and makes you jealous because you don't have him on your team. I don't know. Is this a good time to jump right into the games throughout the rest of the playoffs? We've got a breakdown of that too.
Let's do it. We're going to go around the league for really quickly, folks, and just give you an idea of what else is going on in the league. Obviously, Tampa is in control of the Florida series. The game today, besides the 2 injuries, Florida was starting to get kind of chippy. They were starting to, somebody called it Florida man hockey, if you're used to the Florida man memes. Definitely was starting to be rough and tumble. Tampa's such a scary team to me because they were able to sit Kucherov out the whole year so that he didn't affect the salary cap. So now, if there was a salary cap in the playoffs, they'd be $19 million over because they're so good, they just didn't even need those guys to play. What's going on up north?
Well, up north, it's hockey is life in Canada, and the whole, country shuts down to watch, especially one series in particular. But I'm going to stay first focused in the team that is just 322 kilometers north of me, the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Winnipeg Jets. Now, goaltending, special teams, secondary scoring, all super important. So far, the Oilers have just one of those items. That is their goaltending. Where is Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, the two most potent scoring weapons in the league, have been taken completely out of the game. Paul Maurice, former Hurricanes coach, now coaching the Winnipeg Jets. He has a plan. And of course, Connor Hellebuck, a wonderful goaltender in Winnipeg who is standing on his head. And they have done something to completely shut down those two. And the problem is, this is not the Edmonton Oilers of the 80s, where if by some magical ability, you were able to shut down Wayne Gretzky and Yari Curry. Well, the Oilers had the answer with Mark Messier and Glenn Anderson. And they had scoring throughout their lineup. Right now, the Oilers have none of that. Keep McDavid off the score sheet. And once you do that, Draisaitl, by default, who plays on his wing, also off the score sheet, which means you've got the Oilers beat already. And that's just how that series is going now. Look, they're going back to Winnipeg. The Oilers are too strong. They are the better team in this one. I would expect a win and an amped up McDavid and Draisaitl tandem to really try to take control for the next game. But if they lose another game in Winnipeg, I believe the Jets are going to move on. But let's wait and see game 3. As for the Leafs and the other team, which will not be named, at least not by me. The Leafs taking on another rival team in the league that I hate. They get a late start in this one. They've only played one game. They play their second game Saturday night. Now, the first game marred by the injury to John Tavares, a terrible incident where he gets hit and spun around. It was kind of a mini hip check, kind of body check that spun him around, and he wipes out in front of Corey Perry, who tries to jump over him and smokes him with his knee solid to the head. It was a very, very scary play. And we're all very thankful that Tavares, gave the thumbs up as he was taken off the ice, but it certainly changed the atmosphere of the game. And, when you look at the atmosphere changing and they got Mitch Marner, the Leafs have Marner. There's so much talent on the Leafs. There's no reason why this shouldn't be a runaway for the Leafs. Oh yeah, that's right. Carey Price, one of the best goaltenders that the NHL has ever seen, and he can steal games. He has that opportunity to do it again. Can the Leafs beat him? It's going to be tough to say, especially missing Tavares. He is important to this squad for the depth, and I think the Leafs are going to have to turn up their game. I believe they will. I think this one, after the Saturday night game, will be a series tied at 1. I expect this one to go 7 games. Just because that's the way Canadian hockey is, and especially that particular rivalry.
I'm going to interject a quick note on Tavares. He was released from the hospital, everyone. He's out at least 2 weeks for the knee injury in addition to a concussion, but there's no structural damage. So he is concussed. There's no structural damage at all to his neck or his spine or his head. So whatever concussion symptoms, we always know that's a tricky game. But overall, Tavares is in actually very good shape considering the hit that he took by that.
Considering the hit. And I think I can speak for us both when we wish him a very speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
Injuries like that are dangerous. And the fact that he is in the shape that he is in is good news through and through. So get well soon, John. The hockey world is better with you on the ice. No question.
So I thought I'd throw out there the East. A series, I only watched game 1, to be honest. I've seen the highlights of the other games. Pittsburgh, New York Islanders. I thought this was going to be a Pittsburgh runaway. The Islanders are playing tough hockey. Even though the Hurricanes took care of the Islanders in 4 straight 2 years ago, the Islanders have a very good franchise. Sidney Crosby, he's getting to that age. How many more years is he going to have left for a cup run? He's putting it out there on the line. It's been a good series. And this is one that I thought I didn't need to watch because Pittsburgh was just going to take this series. But it's 2 games apiece. So looking forward to seeing how that was going to shake out. I'm going to have to start watching that series. On the other end of the ice, I live in New England. Boston, Washington has been physical. The Boston, I thought, was in trouble after game 1. Washington looked really solid. We knew it was going to be a physical game. You have guys like Ovechkin, Tom Wilson, obviously, Marchand, Char is in there for Washington playing against his former team. And I thought after game 1, I'm like, oh, Washington might put this to bed in 5 or 6 games. The fact is, Boston has come back. It's a 3-1 lead for Boston. They can clinch that series tomorrow if they can get past Washington.
Always the most difficult to get, no matter what series you're in. And that's going to be a great series. I'm going to jump in and take things west here. A little further south to me here, Vegas and the Minnesota Wild. This is a display of just how good Marc-Andre Fleury is. The man in game one alone probably had 5-star saves. How the pucks weren't going in the net was just beyond belief. And over on the other end, the Minnesota Wild, Cam Talbot putting on a show too. He's playing really great. The Wild get the first win in overtime. It was magnificent. And so it was 0-0, and they go out there, win game one, 1-0 in overtime. And then finally in game two, it was Marchessault for the Vegas Golden Knights who broke the seal. And once the first goal is scored, it looks like I don't know if it's his confidence is shaken or just what, but the floodgates open and the Golden Knights start filling the net. And that's the way it's been going. They've been down in all of the games, but once they score, they seem to sail. And that's what you expect out of a team as solid as Vegas. What has not been a great series is the Colorado Avalanche, St. Louis Blues. The Avalanche win the 7-game series in 3 games. The Blues, they do not have an answer to the Avs' speed, their scoring, their defense, their goaltending. In 3 games, I know you love numbers, so I did a little homework. I did a little homework for you. You're getting impressed with this. The Avs have outscored the Blues in 3 games, 15-5. That is 3-1 in 3 games. Here's another thing for numbers for you. The Blues have not led in a single solitary second in 3 games. Avs win the series. It's done. Over. So there you go. That is the West. That is the look around the NHL's playoffs. We are so excited. We love it all.
The Vegas-Minnesota series has been incredibly entertaining. The Wild have been playing up to the level, in my mind, of Vegas. They played up tough during the season, but Vegas is a very scary team in terms of the deep playoff run. And I think we're going to see Vegas, Colorado. And it's going to be fireworks. I'm giddy.
It's going to be fireworks.
Is the right word.
And I know that you like the Golden Knights to move on all the way to the final. That's you and I will disagree on that one. The Avs, if the Canes aren't winning that Stanley Cup, it's going to be the Avs.
The reason I have Vegas in the finals is because I don't want to play the Avs. If I'm being honest, right? If Vegas will do me this one favor and just take the Avs out force in 7 games and just beat the tar out of each other and let the Hurricanes come in from playing, I think it's going to be Pittsburgh. We talked about this last time. If they can get through the Predators and then they can get through likely Tampa Bay, those I think might be their hardest series, because if they play Tampa Bay in the second round, I don't know that there's anybody better than the Hurricanes in Tampa Bay coming out of the East. It could be Boston. It could be Pittsburgh. I think the Canes are better than either of those teams. I think Tampa Bay is better than either of those teams. And there'll be that a little bit of unfamiliarity where they, the Bruins in particular have really been Kane killers in the last couple of years. They haven't seen Ned. They haven't seen the young guys stepping up. They haven't seen our new fourth line centered by Lawrence. They haven't seen Aho and Svechnikov, Nino, those guys taking things to that next level. And Pittsburgh's not really a team that I think of when I think of rivals for the Hurricanes. When I think of Pittsburgh and the Hurricanes, I normally think of Ron Francis, which is kind of a happy memory, I guess, of him coming back home.
Sad.
Well,
happy
depending
and sad.
on for Whalers, maybe not, but for a Hurricane, Ron Francis comes home versus Ron Francis is being given away. So I really do think that, if the Hurricanes can get out of the second round and into the third round, they have a really good shot at playing for the title. And then it's a matter of most likely Vegas or Colorado. Either of those teams would be scary, but that's the kind of hockey I like to watch. That would be a really fun series.
Just tremendous. And I know it's going to make a lot of my Canadian friends a little disappointed that we're not including, a Canadian squad as a team with a real serious possibility to go to the Stanley Cup final. But the way it's lined up, it just doesn't. I mean, they've got the potential to do it. But again, Oilers are one-dimensional. The Jets have Hellebuck, who's outstanding, but when you look at their scoring and so forth, they play a tough, gritty game, and they got a good coach. I like Paul Maurice. I'd like to see him do well. If I were
Still
to
a good guy.
Yeah, if I were to pick a team from the North, I'd love to see Winnipeg. I'd love to see them be the team that represents Canada moving on. it still means that you're going to have a really hard time getting
Yeah.
past the Abs or anyone else for that matter.
I think the problem with the divisions as is, I think it worked out great. I think the season was wonderful, but from a purely Canadian perspective, only one of those teams is going to advance.
Yep.
So you're almost shooting yourself in the foot right off the bat by saying you don't have better than a 25% chance of getting somebody in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't the Avalanche and Vegas playing as well as they have, Toronto, I think, in most years would have a better shot. I think this year, I don't think they have the firepower. I would love to be wrong. I think
Well, the
back to
best
2006, man, U.S. Canadian Stanley Cup Finals was a lot of fun. The Oiler fans were the nicest fans I've ever run into in Raleigh. Thousands of people came down with no tickets, no way to get in the game. People offered me 3-4 times what my season tickets were worth. I said no, but they came down just to be near hockey, and I love that idea. I like having the idea that Hurricanes fans will continue to develop and that we'll have those kind of away games going forward.
Well, and the best news for the Leafs is in this year is that they don't have to play the Bruins until maybe the Stanley Cup final, and then all bets are off, right? So there you go. I mean, the Leafs already feel like they've won a series in this one because they don't have to face the Bruins. Man, this playoff season has been great. Not really much more else to say. I think we've got it all covered here for this
I think
one.
We do.
Moving
forward, we're certainly out of time. We're gonna be trimming this. I'm gonna be up late tonight, but I'm looking forward to it because it's fun to do. We'd love to say that hockey is for everyone, whether you're a Caniac or a jerk. It doesn't matter because, well, we're all a bunch of jerks anyway. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to email us at stormcellar97@gmail.com or find us on Twitter under the name Stormcellar. Our intro music is Year of the Exodus, licensed under Creative Commons by Tech Warrior. You can find him on YouTube, SoundCloud, or AudioPad. We appreciate you listening. Thanks a bunch.